I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, this
That's rough.
it's definitely rough.
Now they're definitely gonna send me a cease and desist.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to know, man. It's fair game with me. So
Fair game as well. Well, with that, thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. There's another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We travel down to the greatest music city in the USA, and I'm talking with Zach from the band 30 Nights of Violence. Thanks for coming on the show with me.
thank you so very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course. For the few people at home who are watching or listening who don't know you or the band musically, what you're a part of, can you just give me a proper intro, your name, the bands, and where you're based?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Zach Wilbourn. I am the lead vocalist and primary lyricist for 30 Nights of Violence out of Nashville, Tennessee. I also play drums for a band called A Needle Under the Nail. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And if anyone that knows me knows how much I fuck with the color orange, so Zach has a very on point look, in my opinion, with the orange beanie and the typo negative shirt in orange. So
Thank you.
just bringing a lot of that necessary color into this podcast. Yeah. So 30 Nights of Violence, you guys put out a EP pretty recently in the last couple months here. So we're going to be chatting about that, some of the lyrics, and I guess like musical direction.
Sure.
I think I discovered you guys, I'm not 100% sure, but I threw on a song just on our playlist, and then that kind of got the conversation about doing this podcast kind of going. So we'll be chatting about that. Before we get super deep into it, we got to do our bev check before we get super deep into the conversation. So to match Zach's beautiful outfit, I got a tangerine LaCroix. I got two podcasts with me today, so I got to have like the fancy bev and then just like a normal bev to kind of balance it out.
Right on, man.
That's awesome. What did you bring yourself?
Today, we're just sipping on a hot peppermint tea, just like Green Wise from Publix, and it works and it's good. And yeah, it's a little dreary here today, so it's just it's good time for tea.
Yeah, time for tea. Yeah, it's definitely like sometimes I try to acquire the second coffee of the day, but if it's like, if I have anything more than that, I'll start to get the caffeine shakes. But having tea is a nice way to kind of mellow into the evening and whatnot.
Totally. Got to balance it out.
Yeah. So I will crack this as it sprays onto my computer. And cheers. Thanks for coming on the show.
Cheers, bro. Thank you for having me.
What's that mug? That mug looks a little interesting.
Yeah, I bought this at Central Square Records. It's a smaller record store in a little community in Florida called Seaside, and it's kind of interesting because it's like a very just like I really don't know how else to describe it other than like it's like just a haven for suburban like white folks, and it's very it's very vineyard vines, like that kind of vibe, which is all well and good. But these guys were in a really, really awesome shop down there. I bought lots of great records there. So it was about time I think I picked up a mug to commemorate how much I love that store. So it's nice. Little left-hand path out in that area with some really kicking tunes and records. So
very cool.
They rock.
Yeah. It's my sister used to work at a coffee shop record store in just outside of Toronto, where my parents are now, and it was just like so cool to be able to be like getting buzzed on caffeine and then getting to look through all these like really old records in the basement.
That's awesome.
Super
cool.
Zach, I'm a firm believer in context about how people got into heavier music. So how we start off a lot of these podcasts is just kind of doing an origin story on how you discovered all this very strange music as far as screaming and breakdowns and metal
Yeah,
riffs.
totally.
So yeah, let's. I'll kind of give the floor to you. You just tell me some of those formative years and just what put you on that path to getting here to
Yeah,
do this podcast.
totally. My trajectory, I think, to getting into heavy music is definitely uh, not to say it's like very different from other people's. I think like a lot of the same bands kind of find themselves coming into that conversation whenever I do talk about this. But I say my trajectory was a little strange in the sense that when I was really young, and my earliest memories of bands and live music is very much rooted in jam bands. So like my very first favorite band ever was Grateful Dead when I was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. And then from there, you know, Widespread Panic, Fish, like a bunch of bands kind of within that scene that both my dad and my oldest brothers kind of put me onto when I was super young. And then I feel like naturally that kind of evolved into getting into just like rock music, classic rock music. You know, I was listening to a lot of Motley Crue, Aerosmith, you know, those kind of bands when I was just a child. And then around the fifth grade, um, I remember very specifically my oldest brother put me on to Deftones and showed me the very first song I ever recall hearing was Back to School, and I saw the video for it. And then, I mean, I think like really from there, the rest was kind of history because that immediately tapped me into all of the new metal bands. And so from there, it kind of naturally progressed into being into Deftones and then Slipknot and like Tool and Machine Head and all these kind of groups from like the late 90s, early 2000s. And that was pretty much what I listened to religiously up until um, maybe like high school. From high school is when I kind of got put on to punk music and hardcore music, just through like some of my other friends, and I got really into like deathcore and that kind of stuff too. And that's kind of what I listened to like all throughout high school, which was also that time also coincided with my introduction to going to shows. So when I was about 14, I was like constantly like haggling trying to find rides to like shows and all that kind of stuff. I grew up in Alabama and we didn't have like a tremendous scene there with like no real quote unquote venues. Um, you know, I very vividly remember going to shows that were in front of someone's trailer, like on a gravel parking lot, and like with like generators running. Yeah, so it was
Sounds
very
very
much,
Alabama to a
yeah.
T.
Only Alabama, I think, could pull something like that off. But that was very much tethered, I think, to the very DIY ethic that you know has constantly found itself throughout hardcore's history and still kind of remains prevalent today. So that was cool. So after that, when I graduated high school, I actually moved to Nashville for school, and I've been here for the last like almost 5 years. And yeah, I got really involved in the scene up in here. Thankfully, some of the guys who actually play in chamber now used to play in a band called Hanging Moon, and my one of my very first hardcore bands actually ended up playing with Hanging Moon in Birmingham. And so I got really close with Gabe, who plays guitar for that band. And so I already kind of had a network of people that I kind of knew just from like Nashville bands that I played in Alabama and kind of vice versa. So I knew like a good handful of people. So my transition kind of moving here was pretty smooth, and then getting involved in the community here. And yeah, the rest has kind of been history, but that's kind of like what my timeline of all this looks like.
Yeah. Did you find that was there maybe a little undertone with thoughts of going somewhere for school where you wanted to go to Nashville because they had, well, just even just outside of hardcore, maybe this is a little bit ignorant from my point because I've only been to Nashville like once in my life, but
Sure.
just being such a like a prevalent just spot for music and everyone's
Yeah,
just trying to
totally.
become the next fill in the blank artist.
Yeah, absolutely. It has there's a really, really cool community here. And it's funny because I actually go to school for music business and I'm about to graduate in music business. And I've interned for several companies here in Nashville, and it's really interesting that I don't think a lot of people understand really how much Nashville has kind of come up as like as far as a hub for the music business has really kind of come up big time within the last like 10 years and has branched kind of outside of maybe just country music. There's a great pop scene here. There's a wonderful hip hop scene here as well. Obviously, we've been credited for our heavy music scene as well. So yeah, it's definitely just a cool melting pot of all kinds of talent. You know, there's all kinds of really, really, really talented artists out here, and it's definitely kind of found its way into that same conversation. I think between like a New York City or a Los Angeles, as far as the music business here goes. So yeah, that was definitely alluring when I was kind of deciding where I wanted to end up. That and the fact that Nashville was one of the only major cities that was kind of within like 4 hours of where I grew up. So it was nice to kind of, I wanted to get away. I wanted to be close to home. And Nashville has definitely kind of allowed me to maintain that balance. So I have really nothing but positive things to say about it. It's one of the coolest cities in the world, and everyone should visit here at least once.
So
and check out what we got going on.
Yeah, I as soon as I got to go there, so a friend of mine, he was actually getting married just outside of Nashville, but like we went downtown. I actually I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Fight. He was like a tattoo artist that passed away a few years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a panther that he did, and like such a stand-up dude. Anybody who's listening who doesn't know about Mike Fight, definitely go check out his work. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Hugest Star Wars nerd. I don't know if you knew that about him, but just like he was like, here's my Stormtrooper suit, here's my Boba Fett suit.
If I'm not mistaken, Mike also did an awful lot of work like in his community, involved in like going to children's hospitals like as a character, like as a Star Wars character.
I think he was telling me he's involved. I think it's called the 501st, and essentially it's all these like super Star Wars nerds who like will do charity runs for people, for kids who are in hospitals and stuff. And it was
absolutely
like it wasn't just like flexing on how much money he could afford to cosplay.
Totally.
Super stand-up dude. But when I was down there, what was really surprising from just the layout of the city, the downtown isn't actually as big as I thought it was going to be. It's kind of like,
it's pretty tiny.
Yeah. It's like, I passed it. I was like, well, what's after this? It was like, nope, that's it. That's the downtown. It's pretty interesting on how it's laid out.
Yeah, Broadway and kind of, I guess, what a lot of people consider like downtown Nashville or like Germantown, whatever, is very, very much kind of condensed into this one hub. And then that kind of expands out into East Nashville, West Nashville, and like kind of more, I think, of what sort of like the silver linings of the city kind of offer. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff that happens in some of the neighborhoods outside of downtown. But yeah, great city. Great place to be, and like I said, everyone should visit at least once for sure.
Hard agree on that. So let's transition to your band. You guys, as far as you know, the amount of releases under your belt I would still consider you guys to be a fairly new band.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me just how the band came together and just like how, because you know, doing this interview, you haven't always lived there, so you kind of got plugged in a little bit, and then probably started with that band. So yeah, let's just talk about kind of the origin story behind that, and then we'll transition into the newest release.
Yeah, totally. So 30 Nights spawned from another band that I was involved with breaking up. I played in like kind of like a death metal, like grindcore kind of outfit called Pinion, which consisted of myself, Kelly Cook, who now plays guitar in 30 Nights, Ethan Young played drums for Pinion, also played for 30 Nights, and the other two members, Blake and Ryan, went on to do some of their own stuff. Also really awesome projects. Ryan is actually involved in a really cool outfit now called Offhand, really awesome hardcore punk from Nashville that everyone should check out. yeah, so when we disbanded, around that time, just sort of coincidentally, Kelly and I were talking a lot about kind of demoing like a metalcore kind of project, like a passion project, really, um, that I could do vocals over because I was playing bass in this last band. Um, yeah. And so when Kelly kind of started putting these demos together around the time that Pinion was kind of like fizzling out, um, I just kind of pitched like, we could totally, fill this out with a lineup and just make it a band. And from there, it only really made sense to have Ethan be the drummer. And so he got on board. And then from there, Jake, who plays bass for us, was a good friend of Ethan's and of mine, and was just kind of going to shows and was a good player. So we brought him on for bass. And then I met our other guitar player, James, actually through college. We were both part of a student organization together. Um, and I had no idea he was a guitar player. I was following him on Instagram at that time, and he posted, I want to say it was like Dream Theater or something like that, but like some crazy, just like very guitar heavy band. And I mean, he just like destroyed this solo. And I was like, you got to do this. I was like, this what like, I was like, me and my buddies kind of like got this going on. I'd really like for you to be involved. And actually, the first time that James met everybody in the band collectively was when we did the first record, like in the studio.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
yeah, so he had moved back to his home state of Louisiana for the summer, and it was over that summer where we pretty much wrote the entire record. Started recording in late summer. He came back for the semester, came into the studio, met everybody, laid down his parts, and so James is a ripper, and that's kind of how everything got started.
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely interesting on just like the little things that you never expect to find out about new musicians. The band I play in now, we were struggling to always find just a full-time drummer, and it actually took shout out to Travis, who's our current drummer. He messaged me on the Scoped account asking me about like finding out about shows because he had told me he had recently moved back to Calgary, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, if you know any bands who are looking for a drummer, like let me know." And I like went to his account and watched a couple of videos of him just playing to some like faster stuff. I was like, "Well, my band needs a drummer," and so
That's awesome.
I love those little like things that you never expect versus like, oh, I need to go to the show and lock eyes with the guy loading his gear in and be like, hey, can you also play in my band? So you guys just put out a new EP. We'll see you up there out on why am I blanking on the label right now?
It was Unbeaten Records. Yeah.
Unbeaten. I knew that. But yeah, you guys just put that out, and it's sick. Well, is it 5 songs and an interlude, or 6? I guess however you want to spin.
I mean, it's like however you want to divvy it up. 6 tracks, 6-track runtime. One of those tracks kind of serves as like a bridge between 2 of them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I feel like it was definitely when I listened to the first song, I was like, oh yeah, this is a very tight knit. Like I feel like you guys had attention to detail with some of the syncopation of your songs, like no different than like Code Orange does with the majority of their music. Like it was so like very detail oriented with some of the guitar to drum work and matching vocals to rhythms. So the first track, I was like, it just gets right into it, and I was like, yeah, this is a banger. Threw on the playlist, and then leading up to this podcast, I actually gave the rest of the songs a proper listen, and I was kind of blown away by how much variety there actually is with like melodic stuff. There's singing on stuff, and then it goes to like a song that's under a minute. It's just blast beats and just aggressive nature in such a short condensed time. So tell me just about the thought musically to kind of be a little bit more not just like a typical metalcore band.
Sure.
Because I think tons of great metalcore bands out there, and it definitely is the most popular or more. I don't want to say trendy, but there is definitely there's a lot of new bands that are
No,
coming out
yeah,
in that regard.
absolutely. Yeah,
But there's few things to really like differentiate yourselves versus like, oh, we all have, we all play in like C sharp and have these kind of chords associated with us.
totally.
So
Yeah. Um, yeah. So when we were kind of conceptualizing what would become You'll See Me Up There, yes, there was like a whole lot of attention to detail with literally everything. And I think that was kind of a mantra that we set for ourselves really early. And when some of the kind of the like first demos were coming together, that was kind of like what we ran with. It was our second record with Tate Mercer, who's an incredibly talented engineer and producer. And I was really happy that Tate definitely kind of assumed more of a producer kind of role and not just be kind of like a standalone engineer. So that was like a huge benefit. Um, from like my individual role, I think um, as a lyricist and as a vocalist, there was an internal demand from me to make everything better than it was before. And that was kind of exploring different avenues vocally, and definitely kind of exploring different lanes lyrically in the sense of like, the first record I wrote a lot about myself. The second record also has a lot to do with, yes, like me and kind of what I struggle with, but it's far more big picture, I think, in the sense of like, rather than writing about like, oh yeah, like this makes me feel this way, I kind of wanted to write more about like, okay, like this makes me feel this way and I feel this way because XYZ, and kind of tethering it to like bigger picture ideas sort of surrounded by, self-awareness and you know sort of more so not like what the excuse me, not so much as like what the trauma was itself, but more so about like how I've taken that trauma, worked with it, and kind of like where it's put me now.
yeah.
So, from a lyrical standpoint, that was kind of where my head was. I feel like as a collective unit, again, the mantra was definitely surrounded by like very high attention to detail. Generally speaking, the whole record was much more collaborative in the sense that we had, different people doing different things. James, for instance, wrote most all of the lyrics on Shattered Glass, which I just kind of like came over the top of and just sort of like kind of like, all right, like I can make this work as a vocalist. And we went from having three voices. Well, it was mostly me and then like Jake and Ethan occasionally, to having like way more of Jake, way more of Ethan, way more of Kelly doing vocals too, and then myself as well. Again, just kind of coming over the top. And we definitely treated the whole thing, I think, as a much more collaborative process. And because of that, I think that's why it kind of lends itself to be, I guess, a bit more different than kind of what's already out there. I also credit a lot of that to not solely being influenced by metalcore and hardcore bands. I think we have a very, very large well of influences. I mean, like my lyrical influences could probably span over like 1,000-page book of people who have like either writers or other lyricists or all kinds of different creatives who have influenced me along the way. And yeah, so I think kind of taking inspiration from what could be considered, I guess, like unconventional for the genre, um, kind of allowed us, I think, to explore different avenues and to have like different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think that probably has a lot to do with like why the record sounds the way it does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I feel like you're kind of strapped into this like roller coaster, and it's not just a straight track. There's all these different twists and turns that you don't really expect on like you know, your typical like metalcore spastic side, but also certain ways where it's like, oh, we're just in a straight like sing along part or chorus style. So and then it's right back into like the man. I have to say, Salt is a banger track.
Thank you.
I'm definitely I've been working on curating a playlist that's songs like just under a minute, nothing more. And then I realized like, oh, this is 59 seconds. It's definitely going on there. So
Yeah, awesome.
um,
Glad we qualified.
yeah, definitely. So on the artwork side of the album, it definitely, like you said, you know, it was important for you to like take influence from a number of different things versus just metalcore and hardcore. And I think the artwork definitely is another example of that, where it's not just like, you know, some statue of an angel looking sad or anything of that nature.
Totally.
It almost like, I listen to lots of like lo-fi hip hop. So when I saw that, I'm like, this is something I would hear in like a chill hop playlist. Like it doesn't really, when you see it, you don't think that it's a metalcore EP. So tell me
Sure.
about the
Yeah.
creative direction behind that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty much exactly what you just said, which was we really didn't want it to look like a metalcore record. Um, we collaborated with just an incredibly talented designer and artist here in Nashville named Alex Miracle, who also plays in a super kick-ass band, Nashville Legends, Cove, awesome band. Check them out. But yeah, I came to Alex with pretty much that concept, which was like, hey, like we want to do this, and this is kind of like the record that we kind of are like working through. Um, and he and I met for lunch and just kind of talked concepts. Um, there was definitely we definitely wanted there to be an emphasis on like multiple textures and sort of like if we put like all these textures kind of on one piece, what does that feel like? What does that create? What does that look like? I mean, a lot of the drafts, and if you check out his Instagram, I think he has the same handle, but it's like at alexmiracle.studio.
I'll
Check
check that
out,
while you're talking it.
yeah, there's a really cool process that he did where he showed a lot of the early concepts of what the what the album artwork would actually look like. And we went through like a couple drafts of just like sort of works in progress, and like eventually settled on what is now the artwork. And there were a lot of like stylistic choices that I think came along the way. Again, like an emphasis on the color palette and what kind of feeling that evokes. Also, like making the choice to not have our band name on the front cover was also like a stylistic choice that we wanted to go with. And everything just from the front cover to the back cover, and for those who bought the physical copy, like the insert, everything was done by Alex. And I mean, he just has, again, kind of like the same mantra that we were rolling with of just such high attention to detail about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And his process and being able to kind of watch it unfold in real time, it was just incredible. And I can't say enough good things about it. But yeah, that was sort of what we wanted to go with, was space, texture, and what we can use to sort of create a feeling or a vibe off of the visual element that also pairs with the sonic element, and how that's all packaged and presented.
Yeah, it almost brought me back to this art class I had in like grade 10 or 11, and it was like we had to listen to music and just paint or draw to whatever the music like that we felt. So, you know, there's people listening to like their top 40 fill in the blank, but I'm listening to like some really heavy like metalcore and all
Sure.
those kind of things. So it's just flinging paint and just going crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to know those things, because it's more so confirmation on the things that I thought when I was I guess analyzing the artwork.
Sure.
To to confirm, Zach, it is alexmiracle.studio.
Awesome.
Seems like he also did some stuff for Chamber as well, it looks
He
like.
did, yeah. He just did the most recent Chamber LP album art. I can't wait to see what the physicals look like for that, because I'm sure they're going to be incredible. But yeah.
Very cool. I normally don't ask this question because I feel like it's a pretty level one, band music interview question. But picking the name 30 Nights of Violence, is there a reason behind that? Or is it like, this just sounds sick?
It's definitely just because it sounds sick. It's a lyric taken from a Deftones song called MX. It's the closing track on Around the Fur. And the full lyric is 30 Nights of Violence and Sugar to Love. And I liked the beginning portion of that, and I was like, this works. Yeah. So, and
the Deftones circle is complete.
Oh yeah. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the new Deftones that's being put out at this time of recording this podcast?
I just listened to it this morning. I really like it. I like it a lot more than maybe most people. Okay. At least based on some of my bandmates' opinions and those who I have talked about it with. Yeah, I like it a lot. The only thing about it that really bugs me is I feel like the mix is kind of underserved. I really love the production on like Koino Yokon, or even like Diamond Eyes, like, something like that. Like it feels like a very produced like metal record, but it works for them. You know what I mean? But this most recent release, Ohms, it like, I feel like they really, really wanted to do like kind of a back to basics kind of thing, and kind of went with like more Around the Fur or White Pony style production, which works, but maybe not as well as it could have. Sure. And so that's like the only place where it misses the mark for me. I think all the songs are really, really cool. It's kind of a more subdued vibe, which like I'm really into. It's kind of nice to hear the band like pump the brakes a little bit and maybe kind of go into like different avenues. God, like I just wish the mix had been better. That's it. But other than that, I have nothing but good things to say about it.
You have to wonder when your band is at that magnitude where, you're on huge labels, and I almost think that there are some like executive people who are listening to mixes, and they are maybe like having like, well, maybe we could make this a bit, more this style, because there's data that shows so. I have to question that just from like a
totally.
We're very small food chain, and Deftones is way up here outside of the frame of my Zoom window here. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Who knows? Either way, kick-ass record. I really like it. So
yeah. So to transition back, what we were talking about as far as the band name, I was trying to find if you guys had a Facebook page, and I guess that there's another 30 Nights of Violence band, but it's the 30 is spelt out.
Yeah, the number 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
so
like
I always find these weird things with certain bands that are in totally. It seems like you guys are in totally different musical genres, but have you guys had any confrontation with them?
No, we haven't. No. I want to say like the closest thing is, I want to say I maybe have read like one comment in the past that's like, the other 30 Nights of Violence is better. And I'm like, okay, like that's fine. But other than that, no. But yeah, I think it's weird. I want to say they're kind of like if I remember correctly, they're kind of like a scrams band or like a screamo band, which like I'm totally into. Like that's 100% my shit. But yeah, no, we haven't had any like interactions with them really.
Yeah.
Thankfully. please don't send us a cease and desist.
Yeah, please not. I almost want. I'm just kind of checking it here because there might be even multiple versions of that band, because the one that I saw was like, it looked like the the worst metal looking logo of all time.
Dope.
But dope. But let me see if I can just quickly pull that up, because I don't know if it was. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, this.
That's rough.
It's definitely rough.
Now they're definitely gonna send me a cease and desist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's always funny. I'm pretty close with a lot of homies from this straight edge band from Minneapolis called Gadget, and
Cool.
randomly I got a comment on my when I filmed them at Snow and Flurry in Minneapolis. I got a comment from another band called Gadget, and it just says "play faster," and I was like, "This is weird." So I went and checked out that band's music, and Gadget's very like triple BS, like hardcore, lots of like jammy, two-steppy kind of riffs, and this other band is just like power violence to the T, just so
That's
fast.
Awesome.
So I was like,
awesome.
I'm gonna throw this band on the playlist too. Why not?
That's cool. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, but yeah, it's always funny hearing the different stories when you can't help but like. There's so much music and bands in the world now that there's going to be
overlap.
one person that you have some similarity on that front. As far as other things on the new album, you guys, I guess you did a single for the last song, and you kind of put that out first with a video and then released the entire thing. The video itself is kind of interesting because I think there's this whole theme with you guys where it's like we are a tight-knit metalcore band, but like we're almost like putting it out there like that we're gonna like prove you wrong on a lot of things, like on the artwork side and the music video front, like everyone's like dressed up like they're going to prom.
Yeah, sure.
So tell me the creative process on that front to do it a little bit different versus like what's the grimiest warehouse that we can find in Nashville to shoot a video.
So going into the video, I think like the dress was one of the few things that we kind of decided like really early on, and we again following the same thing of just being very intentional with everything, and like everything has to look a certain way and feel a certain way, and it worked, thankfully. Otherwise it would have been we'd be having a very different conversation. But so we worked with a great friend of mine named Joey, who's just incredibly talented photographer and videographer. And it's funny because when I first met Joey, this was like my freshman year of college. Again, another friend I met through college. He was not a photographer. He like had a DSLR camera that he was like fiddling with. And I mean, just over the course of the last like 4 or 5 years has just flourished into just an incredible, incredible photographer, videographer, just man behind the camera. He's a legend. He's awesome. But his I know for sure is at Pentax Playboy with an I instead of a Y. So go give that man a follow because his creative work definitely deserves your attention.
And especially with a handle like that, you have to at least search it up.
Yeah, he is the Pentax Playboy, and don't get it twisted. But so the video. We all met at a coffee shop with Joey and just kind of started conceptualizing like what we wanted to do. And there were a couple of decisions made really early on that I think kind of made the video like what it is, which was to keep the color palette sort of following the album art, which was like, very neutral, beiges and then grays and like some other kind of flavors in there, but not deviating too much from that, kind of keeping it very neutral. We definitely wanted it to surround sort of this one figure who kind of goes through like this process of both kind of like, you could call it like birth and death if you want, but it's sort of just to kind of, I think, narrate both the beginning and an end of things and sort of the transitional phases like between those two things. And maybe where you start versus how you end up. There's a multitude of ways it could be interpreted. Excuse me.
Interpreted is the word of the day.
Sure, interpreted, because I can just throw as many syllables into a word as I want and it works. William Shakespeare did it. I mean, why can't I? So, but yeah, it could be interpreted in like a multitude of different ways. But Wyatt, who everyone says looks identical to Steve Harrington from Stranger Things, was the was a very, very talented model dancer, great friend of mine. When we were conceptualizing the video, he was like the only person. He was like, I kept telling him, like, it has to be him. It can't be anybody else. And thankfully we were able to make that work. So he came in and delivered some wonderful, wonderful performances there. And then the sort of the video narrative was again surrounding the song lyrics, which had a lot to do with sort of giving yourself up to maybe like a really, really bad habit or lifestyle that is actively causing you great pain, but not, and like being aware of that as you continue to kind of indulge in this. And it's rough, it's rough to kind of be like in the midst of that and, aware that there probably is a way out, but also being too apathetic to find a way out. And yet you're constantly caught in this vicious cycle of just, feeling like shit about yourself. And so demonstrating that, which I think like some of the shots, for instance, there's a shot where I'm kind of arguing with a very subdued version of myself. That was like a sort of a key moment, I think, in that. A lot of the dances that Wyatt did were kind of surrounding this tension of like, sort of through like body contortion and that kind of thing of like, creating massive tension. And then there's a section where he opens up his body a lot and is doing these very like flowy kind of elegant dances, which I think kind of demonstrate again sort of the different, or like the different feelings of like very tense or very free and open, expressive, and kind of juxtaposing those two. So yeah, it was very just like taking very distinct symbolism that we conceptualized and putting that together. And Joey just made it happen. It was just an absolutely incredible process, and we knocked it all out in a day, and it was the longest fuck day, but it was awesome. It was really, really awesome.
Yeah, that level of a music video shoot where there's a backdrop and setting up like the drums and the amps and just getting everyone like just set up, and then you're doing the takes and you're like trying to be at the same level energy wise, but you're just like, oh man, just it wears on you very, very quickly.
Yeah. It was also it was raining all day, and so we like loaded it in the rain, which is fine, it happens. But the worst part was Wyatt at the opening shot had to like emerge from this mattress that we picked up for free on like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something like that. And I mean, because it rained and we went and picked up this mattress, I mean, the whole thing just got soaked. Like it was just, and it was old. It smelled like shit. It was wet. It was just like every bad thing that could have happened to this mattress probably happened to it. And so I'll never forget like looking at Wyatt and being like, hey man, I really need you to like lay on this for just like a few shots. And he was such a trooper about it. So kudos to Wyatt for being as cool as he was. But yeah, that was a fun day.
Had a very long shower after being on that mattress.
I'm sure.
I'm sure no one was like, oh, like, has anyone called dibs on the mattress? Like, it was probably going to get thrown out anyways, but with it being rained on, it was for sure, let's get rid of this.
Yeah, it promptly made its way to the studio dumpster when we were done. So.
Fair enough. Is there any plans you guys have for other videos or other material? Not material by any means, but just how are you guys planning to, I guess, like milk what you can with this during this weird time of like not being able to
Yeah,
tour on that material? How are you trying to keep that
totally.
going?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge bummer. We only have been able to play one song from the record live, and it was In Vain. And it wasn't even like the final version too. So there's like just some elements that were missing from it. So we played the skeleton version of it on our last tour, and then unfortunately we haven't been able to play anything since then, all things considered. Um, but thankfully, everyone's doing what they can to stay safe, so it's good. Yeah, I mean, we were very much aware of this, like knowing that we were going to have to put out a record in the midst of all this because we already kind of pushed a little bit, and we were like, it's now or never. Like we have to do it now. So we just kind of bit the bullet and did it. Um, and it's actually worked out like surprisingly well. I think the big thing that every band or artist has to understand right now is like content is king. So continuing to put out content that people are interested in. I think like doing like the guitar tabs and the bass tabs were really fun. We obviously did the video. We raffled off a test press, and it's all been really really cool. We definitely have some more stuff in the pipeline that we will debut eventually when things are all good. But yeah, I think there's definitely been an emphasis on our end of like how can we kind of act as like sort of like a band behind the curtain, you know what I mean? It's like if you're on the other side of the curtain, you see all this stuff happening, but you can't actually see the band that's doing it. So just kind of like putting stuff out there and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And we have plans to maybe do another video or perhaps a live stream. We also have some other stuff, like I said, that's coming through the pipeline. But yeah, it's definitely put a massive weight, I think, on just content and putting out good content, and continuing to engage with like people who like you through socials or that kind of thing, trying to curate experiences where you can relate to someone on like a very human level. But yeah, so kind of taking that strategy and applying that to sort of the way we market ourselves and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, I think I don't think that there's ever been a time in, call it, music history where live performances have been removed from the equation, and now it's on the artists and bands to, who are already for the most part creative individuals, to really push that into other means, aside from just playing music live.
Yeah,
um, and,
absolutely.
and I think that there is, bands who are holding off on releases until 2021 to hopefully be, in the thoughts of, oh, it'll be more relevant when we play. But I when I think of when shows come back, I'm still gonna think about records that came out during this time, and
Yeah.
and my argument is I'm almost gonna feel indebted that these bands actually put music out during the time when I couldn't be, or I guess show my support in the flesh kind of manner.
Yeah, totally. In the sense of definitely like showing up and being there. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very cool of you to look at it that way, because there's definitely a lot of bands that are either sitting on records or are putting out material and can't do it. And it's definitely a bummer, but all things considered and staying safe, it's the right thing to do. But yeah, it definitely sucks. It sucks a lot, but we'll get through it and
Yeah.
it'll be all right. And I'm just looking forward to the day that we can all get back together safely and do it. So
Hell yeah. So Zach, the way that we end these shows is a favorite Mosh story. So that doesn't need to necessarily be something like some KO move that you did at a show or someone did to you, or whatever's the first to your mind is kind of how we end things here.
cool. I definitely have one. It's actually kind of like two combined into one. Um, so back when Pinion was still a band, we opened up for Full of Hell in Louisville one time, and we made the show. And then, if I am not mistaken, I want to say it was Falter who was playing, and started moshing, broke my arm really quick, like kind of right off the bat. And I'd never broken a bone before, so like kind of just flopped to my side, and I was like, oh well, that feels weird, and I can't move my arm very well, but it's probably fine. And drove back to Louisville, or to Nashville from Louisville, excuse me. It was a 3 hour drive through the night. Went to bed on it. Woke up the next morning. I was like, holy fuck! I was like, this is not good. So I went and got it X-rayed. Turns out I fractured my arm. Fast forward to this past year, 30 Nights opened up for the Acacia Strain here in Nashville, which was really fun. And our great friends in the band Chamber played. First song, same shit. I broke my other arm right off the bat. And it's funny because I went back to the same orthopedic doctor, like, 2-3 years later, for another break of the exact same on my other arm. And he's like, oh, cool, man. He's like, you have bookends. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we call bookends because you have two identical breaks on like opposing limbs. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. I was like, well, that's cool, I guess. But yeah, so I have two matching breaks on both of my arms, both from doing the same stupid shit. But yeah, don't mosh. It's bad for your health. Just kidding. Please do it. Or
only if 30 Nights is playing. But the bookends is pretty cool. If you have bookends as far as breaks, please comment it below so Zach can feel a part of a special.
Yeah. We'll start a club.
A special club. Zach, this has been really fun to chat about just the music shit you're a part of, but like all the why behind has been really good to hear. Any handles, places you want to push people to after they finish up this podcast before we end it officially?
Yeah, sure. If you want to check out what we got going on, you can check us out on all your social media platforms. We're on Facebook, 30 Nights of Violence, Instagram at 30 Nights of Violence, and Twitter is at 30 Nights. So if you want to keep up with us, check us out. And you can listen to us wherever you listen to music. So yeah,
definitely go check out the newest EP. I'm excited to see anything else that you guys are up to in the next little while. And thanks again for jumping on the pod with me, my friend.
Thank you, Spencer. I'm very happy to have done it, and very glad you asked me to do it. So thank you.
Of course.